As I've been putting together this video, all I could think about is how, to me, this video is a love letter to Her Late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. After a brief introduction, I will share with you 7 elegant life tips that we can all take from the iconic life of this incredible woman. I'll be leaving timestamps down below if you'd like to skip straight to the tips. And following the tips, I'll share with you a little bit about my experience getting to, perhaps meet is too strong of a word, but getting to observe Her Majesty. So without any further ado, let's get started. I'm wearing black today out of respect for the Queen's passing. And I'm wearing pearls inspired by Her Majesty, as well as this bright pink lipstick, which was actually created by Charlotte Tilbury. It's called the Queen and it's inspired by the bright pink lipsticks that the monarch is so well known for. I also want to introduce you to someone who will be joining us in the background of the video. This is Susan. It's a little corgi that I purchased, nearly 7 years ago when I first went to Windsor Castle, and I named it Susan because that was the name of the Queen's first corgi. So a little corgi, a little memory of the Queen. I've been a fan of Queen Elizabeth II for as long as I can remember, and I know that many Canadians and people around the world and around the Commonwealth are mourning her loss. During this sad and difficult time, I personally have found great comfort in watching content about the Queen's life, hearing little stories from politicians and world leaders who got to meet her. And as I hear and read statements from leaders around the world about the Queen, there were some just really common elements and threads that I kept on picking up on, and I thought it would be really nice to create a video that kind of brings together some of those lessons and hopefully is a little bit of enjoyable content during this difficult time. On her 21st birthday, Princess Elizabeth, as she was then known, was with her family on a tour of South Africa. And in a speech broadcast on the radio from Cape Town, there's that iconic quote that we've all heard so many times over the last couple of days. She said, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." Now, of course, that was directed towards the Commonwealth, but I really reflect back on that quote, and she said, my whole life, whether it be long or short, and what a long life it was. And she truly did serve till the very last moment, appointing her final prime minister only 2 days before passing. Speaking of her last prime minister, something that just, for me, really solidified my view of her as a true bridge between the past, the present, and the future. Her first prime minister, Sir Winston Churchill, was born in 1874, and her last prime minister was born in 1975. That means that her first and last prime minister were born 101 years apart. Think about where the world was in 1874 when Winston Churchill was born, and think about where we are today. And to think that the influences that were on his life that would have shaped him into the leader that he was at the time, all the way through to the lady that the Queen is today. Like just think about that spanning of time. For me, I just find that absolutely incredible, and really, to me, I think that's what's so special about her long reign. Consider the Queen's grandmother, Queen Mary, who was born in 1867, the same year that Canada as we know it today was created. Her grandmother was born the same year that Canada as we know it was created. To me, that's absolutely wild. For me, it's that Queen Mary had such a big part in raising, mentoring Queen Elizabeth. And the advice that Queen Mary gave her grandmother at the time was that it was undignified for a member of the royal family to be seen smiling in public. Think about that for a moment. As the Queen Princess at the time was being raised, she was being told not to smile at the public. And consider that, and bring it all the way forward to just this year, when she had her radiant smile speaking with Paddington Bear, pulling a marmalade sandwich out of her handbag. Just the amount of change that has happened in her lifetime and in her reign is absolutely incredible. These are the 7 life lessons, one for every decade of her reign, that I think that we can all take something from. So without any further ado, let's get started. First life lesson that I think that we can take from Queen Elizabeth II is the importance of warmth. Nearly every statement that I've read or listened to speaking on the passing of the Queen referenced her warmth, her genuine warmth. Now let's just consider for a moment that she grew up with a grandmother saying that a queen shouldn't smile in public, but everyone comments on her warmth. To me, I think that warmth was personified in her conversation with Paddington Bear, when she looks up from her handbag and just has that big, beautiful smile. I think our smile is such a big part of creating that warm and inviting atmosphere. And I often think, how can a woman who many of us have never met, right? How can a woman who many of us have never met evoke such love around the world on her passing. And I think it's that warmth. I think it's that we felt like we knew her. And she had a way of making that warmth radiate across the camera, through the television screen, and around the world. We may not all have the opportunity to radiate our warmth on a camera around the world, but we do have the opportunity to radiate warmth in our own lives. When I look at photos of the Queen, I never really particularly saw a resting bitch face. She had a way of having her neutral face still look inviting, or at very least neutral. And I think that that's something that many of us can work on. I know for myself, I've been really working on my resting face and trying to make it look like I'm not unhappy or angry to be somewhere. But I think what's actually most interesting about that smile that we know and love today is it wasn't her natural state of being. One of her first state visits, the media had reported that she had a rather dour expression, and the Queen remarked to her private secretary, and this quote I'm reading from Queen Elizabeth's Guide to Life. But the Queen remarked to her private secretary, "The trouble is that women are expected to be smiling all the time. If a man looks solemn, it's automatically assumed that he is a serious person, concentrating with grave things on his mind." She said that she had always assumed that people wanted her to look solemn all the time. And maybe that's the way things were in the 1860s and 70s and 80s when her grandmother was coming of age. But today, I think we value that warmth, and the fact that the Queen was able to work on that and radiate warmth around the world, I think that is a beautiful thing. And so I think that we can all learn that your warmth is something that people remember. I often think it does matter what you say to people, but it doesn't matter what you say to people because they won't always remember it, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so may we all strive to bring that radiant warmth that the Queen just personified. Building on that point, let's get into the second lesson that we can take from the life of the Queen, and that is that your presence is enough. Now, Queen Elizabeth II did not do the things that typically great rulers are celebrated for. You know, you look back through history, and at the time, great rulers were celebrated for expanding the lands of the kingdom. Well, under Queen Elizabeth II's rule, her kingdom got smaller and smaller and smaller. But I think most people in 2022 would agree that that is probably a good thing. But what I want us to really think about is the Queen's greatest value is that she was always there. She was always present, whether it's through her Christmas message or going on walkabouts, which is really, when you think about the modern royal walkabout, you know, walking around, shaking people's hands, speaking to the people, that is something that the Queen really modernized. I think that she really strived to be present in the people's lives, whether it's through the charities and the trusts that she was involved in, or just really making herself present and seen. Now, of course, over the last couple of years, that was harder and harder for her to do, and so she had to rely more on her family to do that. But when I look at that, what I really think about is my own grandparents. None of them had particularly noteworthy careers or grand achievements that would have them remembered in the history books. But to me, in my life, they were always present. And their presence was more than enough. They were always there for me, whether it's making my lunch for school, picking me up from school, doing my homework with me, my soccer games, going to my ballet recitals. All of my grandparents were always there. We can all be present for our loved ones if we choose and if we make that a priority. And for you, whether that's your friends or your family or family you might have in the future, I think there is such a value in being present. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, I read this quote about the Queen, and she said that when people had normal, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she said that when people came to visit the palace, you know, tourists would come and they'd take a picture with the camera. She said they'd take a picture and they'd put the cameras away and then she could see their faces. But today, you know, in recent years, we all have smartphones basically. And so she said people would just have their phones up the entire time and living through a screen rather than living in the moment. And she said that she missed seeing their eyes. She missed seeing their faces. And so as a sub point to that presence, I think we should all remember that when we are, you know, building those lifelong memories and being fully present with our family, friends, and loved ones, put your phone down. You know, you are with the most important people to you in the world. Put your phone down, check it discreetly, maybe if you go to the washroom, but try to fully engage in the moment. On to our third life lesson. This is a quality about the Queen that I've seen, again, referenced so many times from people who really had the opportunity to interact with her. And that was celebrating her curiosity. Think about that for a minute. Celebrating her curiosity, the Queen's natural curiosity about people. So I think we can learn from that, to be curious, to ask people questions about themselves, whether that's learning about new people, new countries, new cultures, but that when you're with someone, have a healthy curiosity, have a desire to truly get to know them. I think that we all have a desire to be truly known, and I think that many of us want the opportunity to share about ourselves with other people. And when you are with a conversation partner who's naturally curious, who's asking questions, who wants to learn more, I think it makes us all feel good. And so, well, we can't always control who we're conversing with. We can't control if they're naturally curious about us. I really do believe that we are naturally curious about other people, that people are going to ask us questions in return. And I think from that, we all get to a better place of understanding. So if the Queen of the United Kingdom, and I should also add the Queen of Canada, if the Queen is able to be curious about somebody's life, then I think that we can all take the time to be curious as well. Fourth lesson I think we can take from the Queen is to have your own sense of style. The Queen was once quoted saying that if I wore beige, nobody would know who I am. And so, well, there is definitely a practical side to those vibrant and fun sort of coat dress combinations that she was so well known for, and I mean that I of course featured on the thumbnail of this video. She was known for that beautiful and fun sense of style. Now, I'm not saying that we all need to go head to toe in vibrant colors, but I think there's a real value in having a core sense of style, having something recognizable, arguably for the Queen, recognizable around the world for how you dress and present yourselves. The other thing I would add is, look, I am definitely a fan of neutrals. I love neutral makeup, I love neutral clothing, but the Queen I think also inspires me to have a little bit more fun in my wardrobe and to play with color here and there. And honestly, seeing all this coverage of the Queen over the last couple of days, it's really inspired me to play a little bit more with color. And so while I don't have a lot of color in my wardrobe, maybe there's a fun sweater or a fun shirt that I can add to my wardrobe this winter. The next lesson that I think that we can learn from the Queen is to show, not tell. And I think that can mean a lot of different things, but to me what it fundamentally means is rather than telling someone that you're going to do something, just do it. Rather than telling someone how they should live their lives, live your life in a way that inspires. But to me, my favorite example of the Queen showing and not telling took place in 1998 at Balmoral Castle. She'd been having lunch with King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, and he had expressed an interest in exploring the rest of the beautiful estate. We have to remember that Balmoral is Queen Elizabeth II's favorite place, and an important piece of context is at the time, women in Saudi Arabia weren't able to drive. And so the Queen called for the Land Rovers to be brought forward, and they were brought to the cars, and she encouraged the King to get in the front seat. And then she got in the driver's seat and she ripped around Balmoral Estate. She was driving fast, she was pointing things out, she was talking, and King Abdullah was reportedly terrified. He was pleading through an interpreter for the Queen to please slow down. And did the Queen slow down? No. No, the Queen did not slow down. And I think that that is just such a wonderful example of so many things that the world loves about the Queen. Of course, her famous sense of humor, but more than her famous sense of humor, it was her way to be subtly diplomatic, to get her point across without saying something political. And to me, that is one of the greatest examples of the Queen showing and not telling the way things should be. And show she did. I will say, as I get through this video, it gets a little bit easier to speak about the Queen. So the sixth life lesson that we can take from Her Majesty is the importance of having a hobby. She came to the throne at a time when many women didn't work, and in many ways she may have been the world's most famous working mom. From a quick break for tea, of course my tea has a tea in it from Fortnum & Mason that I picked up when I was in London this summer. And she worked and worked and worked, like I said, all the way up until honestly the day that she passed, which is the commitment that we've already discussed that she made. But she had something else going on in her life, and that was her famous corgis, but also her horses. She loved breeding them, she loved riding them, she loved just taking them on for a walk. She loved her horses. And while it might not be practical for us all to have horses, I think that we can all have a hobby that we're passionate about. I really like to think about the Queen's horses. I honestly think about it as almost part of her self-care. That was her time when she could just be alone with her thoughts. That was her time when she could just focus on the horses. And I can guarantee you that when she was riding her horses, the horses weren't thinking, oh, this is the Queen of England, this is the Queen of the United Kingdom. They were just thinking, this is my lady and we're going for a walk. And I think there's something really special about that. And I can only imagine for her how special that time was. And for us who probably aren't going to lead a country or a group of nations for 70 years, we are going to be busy working. Maybe some are mothers, maybe some are busy working mothers, whatever it is that is keeping you busy, and I'm sure there's a lot of it. I think that it's really important that we take some time for self-care, to just have some quiet time to ourselves, to nourish that other side of ourselves with a hobby, with something that doesn't feel like work, with something that isn't work. And I think that if the Queen can take time out of her busy schedule to ride horses and have that time to herself, then I think that we can all take some time for ourselves in a way that is meaningful to us. And 7, of course, the 7th life lesson has to be a big one because, like I said, it is one for every decade. The 7th life lesson that I've drawn from Her Majesty is to cherish a sense of duty. I believe that that duty is to our family or loved ones and our country. And let me explain what I mean by that. To your family and loved ones, be fully present. I know we've already spoken about that, but be fully present. For me personally, part of what that looks like is calling my grandmas at least once a week, sometimes up to 4 times a week. You know, if I have a 10-minute drive, I'll just call up one of my grandmas and see if they want to chat with me for a bit. And they love getting a phone call. And I know that both of my grandmas would rather have a 10-minute call every other day or every 3rd day rather than have, one half-an-hour call once a week. Now, for example, let's say that we have a family member in the hospital. Well, you should visit that family member. You should check in on them. You should call them. You should, again, be present in their lives. Our friends, that might mean checking in at difficult times. Perhaps a friend has gone through a miscarriage or lost a loved one. Or perhaps our friend has got a promotion and they need to be pumped up and they deserve to be celebrated. Maybe our friend has just had a baby and maybe we can be present by bringing them some freshly baked goods or just letting them know that we're thinking of them and we can't wait to be able to hang out with them and their baby once they're ready. There are so many ways that we can be fully present in our family and loved ones' lives. And of course, that's going to look different for everybody and it's going to look different based on your family and your friends and their needs. But really try to think about how can we show up for our family and friends. Beyond that, I wanted to touch on showing up for our country. It's probably not the way that you're thinking. What I mean by that is showing up for our community, showing up for something bigger than ourselves. And that can look like really anything that you want it to look like. Personally, I'm involved in a number of charitable causes, and so for me, I choose to give my time to organizations that I care about, organizations that I think make Canada and the world a better place, organizations that make my community a better place. What's really cool about that is, like I said, it can be anything you want it to be. So it could be for an environmental charity. It could be for, maybe there's a faith group that you're a part of. It could be going on the streets and providing food to those who are experiencing homelessness. It could be volunteering at a safe injection site. It can be, honestly, whatever it is that is a cause that means something to you. And I think that our communities, our country, and the world is a better place when people choose to give their time and talents to organizations that are doing good in our communities. I wanted to add my experience with Queen Elizabeth II. So in 2002, the Queen visited Canada to celebrate her Golden Jubilee. And I only wish I could go back to 9-year-old Alana and tell her that this was an incredible and historic moment in the making. And I knew that it was special. I mean, it was the Queen. She was coming to Canada. And I was fortunate enough to have a ticket. I believe it was to Ontario Place. It might have been to the Exhibition Centre. But I was fortunate enough to have a ticket to be able to go and be in the same room as the Queen. And so I lined up and I was there with my grandparents and we were all lined up and there was basically this carpet that the Queen and the Premier and the Duke of Edinburgh and the Premier's wife would walk across and they'd shake hands, and I got really lucky that the Queen stood right beside me and we made eye contact, and it was, you can tell I'm still beaming. But before the Queen approached me, I was just wondering, where is she? Like, I saw this little old lady walking in this pink, I remember it was a vibrant, hot pink little suit with a hat, but I remember thinking, where is she? I mean, I see this nice little old lady, but where's the woman whose portrait is hung in my school? A portrait back in 2002 that was hung at my local public school in Scarborough. It was the Queen, I believe it was at her coronation, but she was obviously much younger, and she was wearing the big ermine robe and the big crown, not a tiara, like a crown. And so I thought, I'd always just imagined that the Queen, as she walked down this hallway or this carpet, I just imagined that she'd be in the robes and just with this scepter and the orb. I just imagined that she'd be walking like that. I mean, again, I was 9, so let's forgive me. I just assumed that that's how queens always walked. And then there was this little old nice looking lady. She wasn't even wearing a tiara. And I asked my grandma, where is she? And my grandma said, that's her. And I'm like, that's her? Like, I didn't think she'd be in a suit. I thought she'd look like a queen. And so she wasn't wearing the gown that I imagined, but I think as you can tell, that moment really stayed with me. Later on in the evening, I got to stand on the same stage as her, and just honestly a day I will never forget. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that this video has inspired you some way or perhaps brought you some comfort. Normally on my channel we talk a lot about beauty and lifestyle, and I have recently started a new series called Beyond Beauty where I share my life tips to be elegant, polished, more professional, to succeed in your career and your life. And so while that is a new series on my channel, I definitely didn't imagine making a video like this. I think that there is something really beautiful about the Queen's life that is worthy of celebrating and that I wanted to commemorate here on my channel. I had a number of followers reach out to me after the Queen passed to share their condolences with me, and I was really incredibly touched by that. I know I've referenced here and there on YouTube and Instagram just what an inspiration the Queen is, but I wanted to put all of those thoughts and feelings I had into a video. So this video was difficult for me to make, but I think immensely meaningful. Once again, to Her late Majesty the Queen, thank you, thank you, thank you.